Hi, good afternoon. As mentioned, my name is Cheryl Hayhurst. I'm an engineering geologist with the California Geological Survey, and I'm here to present a large wood habitat restoration project in Soquel Demonstration State Forest. This large wood restoration project includes 4 sites on the East Branch Soquel Creek, which runs through the Soquel Demonstration State Forest. You can see the 4 sites in red there. And Soquel Demonstration State Forest is an approximately 2,700-acre forest that's managed by CAL FIRE in the Santa Cruz Mountains, just to the northeast of the town of Santa Cruz. Soquel Creek is at the southernmost range of the coho salmon habitat, and it was identified as a focus watershed in the NOAA Fisheries 2012 Final Recovery Plan. This project was undertaken to both address the lack of wood and habitat complexity within Soquel Creek and also demonstrate a method of large wood habitat enhancement that mimics natural wood loading and takes into account the geomorphic and hydrologic aspects of the creek. All of the wood elements constructed were either completely unanchored or anchored in a natural way by burial. Within the 4 project reaches, 4 different large wood elements or structures were constructed: whole tree key logs, log clusters, log vanes with rootwad covers, and whole tree rootwad anchor. The trees and logs for the large wood elements were derived from either the adjacent stream banks or from a recent timber harvest at Soquel Demonstration Forest. The unanchored key logs were sized using a stability analysis with a 5-year return interval stream flow threshold. The 5-year return interval design threshold was provided by fisheries biologists with the intent that the key logs should remain generally in place in the creek for 5 years in order to provide a desired habitat benefit. Based on stream discharge measured at a USGS gauge downstream from the project area, a 5-year return interval stream flow is approximately 990 CFS through those project sites. The stability analysis indicated that a key log with a minimum 80-foot length, 40-inch diameter at breast height, and a 10-foot diameter rootwad would remain metastable through a 5-year event. I want to take just a quick moment here to credit this project design to Steve Reynolds. He's my former colleague at CGS, and he has since retired. This photo is an example of the key logs, 3 of which were installed at Site 1 and 1 at Site 2. The key logs are whole trees, including rootwads, that were selected based on their size and location. In all 4 cases, multi-stemmed redwood clusters were used because single-stem trees meeting the requirements of the stability analysis were not available. And the multi-stemmed redwoods were of sufficient height and mass to conform to the parameters of the stability analysis. This is an overview of Site 1 after the elements were placed. All 3 elements are key logs, sized for the 5-year event. The primary elements generally have 9-foot to 12.5-foot rootwads, diameter rootwads. They're multi-stemmed, and the largest stem in each ranges from approximately 30 inches to 51 inches diameter, and the stems range from about 85 to 111 feet long. In addition to the key logs, any broken tops or other smaller trees that fell with the falling of the key logs were incorporated into the structures. The log cluster elements used at 3 of the sites consisted primarily of 4 to 9 loosely interwoven redwood stems. Several also had their rootwad attached. Site 5 used a combination of 2 whole Douglas fir trees and several redwood stems. In general, the stems ranged from 25 to 65 feet in length and 12 to 53 inches in diameter. The log vanes are 69 and 60 feet long with diameters of 28 and 20 inches respectively. Approximately 20 to 30 feet of the length of the vane logs are buried into the hill slope and were ballasted with large rock. The rootwad covers were added for additional habitat value. The Site 4 rootwad anchor is a single-stem 48-inch diameter redwood with a 9-foot diameter rootwad. The stem length is 57 feet. Because this tree did not meet the size requirements for withstanding the 5-year event, approximately 10 to 15 feet of the end of the tree was buried into the channel and ballasted by large rock to provide additional stability. This overview of Site 4 shows the plan view of the remaining 3 types of naturally anchored and unanchored elements used in the project. Upstream at 4A, let's see, oops, oh, here we go. Sorry, upstream at 4A is the loosely rocked unanchored log cluster. 4B is the Rootwad anchor with the end buried in the stream. And 4C is the Vane with Rootwad. Sites 2 and 5 consist of similar elements as 1 and 4. Site 1 was constructed in September 2012. In December 2012, the large wood structures experienced an approximately 7-year return interval streamflow event, exceeding the design threshold of 5 years. Monitoring of the key log elements within 2 months after the peak streamflow event showed that the key log stems rotated and reoriented to a position more parallel with the streamflow path, that the rootwads held in place. And if you can see, the dashed lines are the original placement, and then the solid line is the after the storm event. So all of them kind of rotated more in line. Overall, the elements didn't move downstream from their installed positions. They remained metastable through the 5-year event as designed. Several of the smaller wood pieces that were incorporated into the large wood elements, such as the broken tops, either moved downstream out of the reach or also readjusted positions within the reach. In addition to this post-peak flow monitoring event, annual monitoring is being conducted at each of the sites for a minimum of 5 years post-installation. Annual monitoring primarily consists of rod and level Thalweg surveys to detect channel bed changes. This presentation will primarily focus on those Thalweg surveys. However, additional monitoring aspects include detailed site surveys after substantial changes to the large wood elements and periodic pebble counts for tracking changes in the size of the substrate. The forest is also conducting photo monitoring for each of the sites. And it is our understanding that NOAA Fisheries is doing habitat typing and snorkel surveys in the vicinity of the project sites. So before I launch into the results that we've seen, I want to quickly mention streamflow events. As mentioned before, winter of 2012-13 experienced a 7-year event. The following 2 winter periods were low rainfall years with peak stream flows of about 1.4 and 1.7 year events. This March, the project sites experienced an approximately 10-year return interval event. So here's just kind of some visual photos of an example that things we've seen at Site 1. This is 1C, and we've got the large rootwad and then the cluster. So this was November of 2012, just after installation. And you can see a couple pinned logs that were placed underneath, and the Thalweg kind of generally runs towards the left bank, right up to the rootwad. February 2013, after that 7-year event storm, you can see that those pinned logs now come out from underneath and have kind of ramped up onto the right bank. And we've built up a kind of a gravel boulder bar behind the rootwad, and then the Thalweg has pushed out more into the center of the creek. And then as mentioned, in March we had the 10-year event. This is actually 1B, the 1B rootwad cluster. It mobilized downstream from its position past 1C. This is 1C right here. It has remained in place. So this graph is a little busy, but there are a few key things that I'd like to point out. At the time of installation in 2012, kind of looking at the orange line, there was one incipient pool within the project reach. And for our project, we've defined incipient pools as those with the residual depth of less than 1 foot, and a pool is having a depth of 1 foot and greater. So we began with one incipient pool. And then in the next couple of years, quite a bit of localized aggradation and scour has increased the channel bed complexity quite a bit. And as mentioned before, this year the rootwads 1A and 1B. 1A was positioned right about here, 1B began here, moved downstream. So this is the new location of 1A, and this is the new location of 1B, and then here's 1C. And so the green line is what we've experienced with this 10-year flow, and we're now left with 4 pools and 7 incipient pools through the project reach. So this is an example at Site 2. This is 2B, the Vane with the rootwad cover. So here is the Vane and the rootwad cover. And this is November 2013, right after installation. And you can see there's not a lot of fine gravels. There's kind of cobble substrate. March of 2015, since this is close to 2 years after installation, or 2 winter periods after, we've built up this really nice gravel bar here. And again, those were 2 fairly low flow, winter periods. And then it's a little tough to see, Site 2C down here was one of the key log structures. You can kind of see that there. We've had a bit of aggradation in the creek and a little bit of gravel bars built up in the background as well. After the 10-year event this year, that gravel bar is completely gone. Site 2C actually mobilized the entire structure about 300 feet downstream where it has lodged and formed a new log jam.
For one moment. We have 2 trucks that are blocking so the county courier can't get into and load. 2 Toyotas, one's red, one's black. Black one, 6PFL 472. You need to move your truck. And red Toyota truck, 4D 72048. We really need some access to our courier parking. Okay, that's one. Thank you.
So here is the Site 2 Thalweg surveys. Again, a fairly busy graph, but I think the couple things to note are, in particular, we began with 3 incipient pools, kind of the red line at the time of installation, fairly uniform channel. And then in the next 2 years, we had approximately 2.5 feet of aggradation above or just upstream of the Site 2C log cluster. So that's this area right in here. And we've also had about a 2-foot, oops, I lost my, there we go, 2-foot deep pool scoured at the site of the Vane with the Rootwad. After this year with the 10-year storm, we had, with Site 2C mobilizing downstream, it was no longer retaining that aggraded gravel. And so we had up to 4 feet of scour, oops, keep losing it, up to 4 feet of scour above where Site 2C originally was placed. And so we started out with 3 incipient pools, had quite a bit of changes, and we're left with 9 incipient pools in this project reach. The examples at 4C, so 4C was another vein with the Rootwad cover. Here's the picture of the vein pointing in the upstream direction, and you can see the 4B Rootwad anchor. Remember, this one's buried about 10 to 15 feet into the bank, or into the stream channel. This is the Rootwad, or I'm sorry, the Rootwad anchor. It has mobilized downstream. This is the vein log that this gentleman is standing on. So you can kind of get a scope of the scale of these things. Oh, and then this is the same image on this side here. And what I wanted to highlight here is at the end of the vein log, you have, kind of a uniform channel flow through here. This is the end of that vein log after this year's storm event, and it's scoured, non-cut, and formed a pool just below the vein log. And you can see that reflected in this graph. We started out with this project reach having 4 incipient pools, and I think the big thing to note here is that after the Rootwad fan wound up in this location at the vein log, we've had that down cutting, that scour of about 2.5 feet at that location. And now we have 3 pools and 5 incipient pools throughout the reach. Site 5, we dropped 2 whole fir trees. One of them ended up spanning the channel, and it's the second one back here. And so basically the change that we've seen here with this 10-year storm is that this fir tree here, this is its Rootwad. It actually moved out towards the left bank, and it's entrained additional wood, and you can see that it's done some lateral bank scour as well. And that's again reflected in the graph. We had entrained wood, formed a little bit of a log jam, and now we have both a graded material above that and scoured a 3-foot deep pool below. So I've presented the various channel bed responses observed within the first 3 to 4 years after emplacement of the large wood structures, along with the response of the large wood elements to 2 stream flow events, a 7-year and a 10-year, that exceeded the design threshold of a 5 return interval event. Some of these changes, particularly in response to the larger flows, are impressive. Scour of 2 to 3 foot deep pool, multi-stemmed redwood structures with 12-foot diameter root wads mobilizing downstream. But I think one of the things I really wanted to highlight here that impressed me with this project, and I guess what surprised me, is how fast the stream can respond to wood inputs, even in very low flow years. As we saw before, this was the 2B Vane and Rootwad with no real gravel retention at the time of installation. And in December 2014, so just in that first winter period, we had that gravel bar build up within a very low flow year. So as a final thought, one of the key aspects we wanted to test and demonstrate is the idea of sizing key logs using a design stream flow threshold. With the timing of this project, we were able to test the performance of the key logs with 2 peak flow events exceeding and even doubling our design flow threshold of a 5-year event. Based on our experience with this project and the success of the key logs and remaining generally in place through these events, it appears that using a design stream flow threshold for sizing large wood habitat enhancement elements is the useful method in retaining large wood for a specified time period to achieve the desired habitat benefit without the use of artificial anchoring. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering what methods were used for recruiting the trees to the stream.
I'm sorry, what method?
Or I guess how did you get the trees with the root wads into the stream? What were they?
Oh, yes, we dug them with an excavator. 2 excavators, actually.
I noticed that one of your redwood root clumps was sprouting. Have many of them done that, and do you expect them to stay alive?
We are hoping that they will. There are a few that did sprout. Yes.
I hope I didn't miss this, but are there any bridges downstream or any other structures that might give concern for putting trees in the creek?
There is a bridge downstream on the forest, and then farther off property there are bridges. This project is about, I would say, 1 mile to 1.5 miles upstream of the end of the forest property, so it has a good distance to go. There's also a very tight S-curve in the creek right below the forest boundary, and so the likelihood of any of those structures or stems getting down there and kind of making it all the way around and then continuing to go down is pretty low.
Were the structures effective in capturing wood that was mobilized in the stream channel, or, I mean, it didn't look like a whole lot of stuff got caught, but, I mean, that's part of the goal of some of this stuff, is to get more complex structures in there, right?
Yes, so the downstream structure site 5 did entrain additional wood this time around. And then as you saw the 4C Vane with Rootwad, the Vane actually caught the Rootwad anchor coming down. At the particular project sites themselves, not a lot of extra wood has been entrained, but we have seen places kind of in between. We're monitoring the creek in between, and there has been entrainment of wood downstream and in different places. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.